A black woman walks into a high-end boutique on a quiet Tuesday morning. Her clothes are plain, her hair tied back, her presence calm. The store falls into a strange hush. Behind the counter, the white owner leans toward a younger clerk and whispers, "Just loud enough?" She looks lost. A few customers glance over, then back at their racks. No one greets her. No one offers help. As she reaches for a delicate silver necklace, the owner lets out a chuckle and mutters, "Some folks just don't belong in certain places." The room shifts. A couple in the corner smiles, assuming this is entertainment. Security steps a little closer. She doesn't say a word. She sets the necklace down, softly. But what no one in that boutique knows is that the woman they just humiliated is not alone. Her husband is parking outside. He is not there to shop. He is there to take ownership of the very store they used to shame her. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. Lenora did not come to shop. She came to understand. The town of Crestwood had changed. What was once a modest Georgia neighborhood of soul food diners, barber shops with plastic chairs, and churches on every corner had turned polished and new. Coffee shops replaced corner stores. Condos rose where basketball courts used to echo. With kids' laughter, it wasn't all bad, but it wasn't the same. Lenora had lived in Crestwood nearly 30 years ago. It was where she taught her first class, where she and her husband bought their first home. Then the factories closed, the banks pulled out, and the people who couldn't afford to stay left quietly, one by one. Now boutiques like Lily and Ash stood where a community center used to be. Lenora had driven past it a dozen times. It gleamed with oversized windows and marble floors. She had never stepped inside. Until today. She didn't wear designer clothes. Her wardrobe was quiet, like her spirit. Soft beige blouse, flat shoes, and a silver band on her left hand that had never left her finger in 34 years. She didn't believe in flash. She believed in stillness. Her husband, Warren, was the same. A man who built wealth without attention. He avoided cameras, avoided compliments. He'd rather sit in city council meetings than cut ribbons. When he bought property, he walked it alone. When he changed neighborhoods, he did it with his checkbook, not his mouth. They were opposites of everything Lily and Ash represented. The B store was cold glamour. Its owner, Dana Caldwell, was newer to Crestwood, an outsider who saw the area as untapped potential. Dana wore perfume that arrived before she did. She spoke fast and loud, with the assurance of someone who had never been told no. Lenora had no appointment. She just walked in, curious. She wanted to see what they had done with the place, how a space that once offered free lunches and chess lessons for kids now sold silk robes for $800. She didn't expect warmth, but she didn't expect to be laughed at either. Behind the register, Dana barely looked up. Her eyes flicked over Lenora's clothes, her shoes, her posture, then turned away. She offered wine to two blonde customers near the fitting room. She leaned into her employee's ear with a smirk that said more than words. Lenora wandered slowly, letting her fingers graze the edge of a velvet sleeve. The walls smelled like new leather and ambition. She could feel the eyes on her back. She didn't flinch. Outside, Warren's car pulled to the curb. He had signed the final papers that morning. The boutique, and the building it sat in, was theirs. He didn't tell Lenora to go in first. She chose to. He knew she had her reasons. She wasn't just browsing. She was bearing witness. What she saw in that store, how easily she was dismissed, how little had changed beneath the surface of new paint and glossy branding, told her everything she needed to know. She touched the necklace once more and let it go. Lenora stood in the center of the boutique, hands clasped softly in front of her. She hadn't touched anything in several minutes. The space around her seemed designed to keep her still, sterile, white, and echoing with the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace but from watching eyes. Behind the front desk, Dana Caldwell twirled a pen between her fingers. She didn't hide her gaze. She didn't try to lower her voice anymore either. "She's been in here 15 minutes and hasn't picked up a single price tag," Dana said loudly. not to anyone in particular, but loud enough for everyone. Some people treat stores like museums. Stare all you want, but this isn't a place for window shoppers. Laughter rippled near the fitting rooms, short and sharp. One of the young women trying on heels smirked, whispering something to her friend. Even the cashier, a girl no older than 20, maybe a student just working for the summer, froze between politeness and discomfort. Her eyes met Lenora's for a second, then dropped. Lenora said nothing. She looked down at her shoes, then up at a pair of earrings placed carefully under a glass dome. Across the boutique, the air shifted again. Dana came around the counter, walking slowly, deliberately. She stopped just a few feet from Lenora and tilted her head with mock sweetness. "Hi there," she said. "Can I help you with something? You've been looking around quite a while." Lenora shook her head gently. "No, thank you. Just browsing." Dana's smile tightened. "Oh," she said, drawing out the syllable. "Well, we do have a policy about unattended browsing. Just helps us keep the space safe. Safe." The word hung in the air like an accusation. From a corner of the store, a man in a tailored jacket stood pretending to check the stitching on a blazer. But his eyes never left Lenora. Another woman clutched her purse a little tighter, almost unconsciously. Lenora didn't move. She wasn't afraid, but she knew what was happening. This wasn't about jewelry or browsing. It wasn't about policies or brand protection. This was about the kind of woman who wasn't supposed to belong in a place like this, and the people determined to remind her. Dana turned to the young cashier. "Call Marcus, would you? Just to be safe." The cashier hesitated. "Ms. Caldwell." "Now," Dana said flatly, with eyes that no longer smiled. The girl picked up the phone. Within seconds, a tall man in a dark security uniform appeared from the back hallway. He had clearly been on standby. Marcus looked between Dana and Lenora, unsure of what exactly he was being asked to do. Dana crossed her arms. "I'm just concerned about inventory." "Nothing personal," she said aloud. "But better to be proactive. You never know." Another customer laughed. The couple near the back pretended not to listen but didn't leave. Marcus took a step forward. His voice was low, apologetic. "Ma'am, would you mind stepping outside for a moment? Store policy." Lenora's eyes met his. She nodded once. "I understand," she said quietly. No protest, no scene, no fire in her voice. She turned and walked toward the glass doors. The sound of her shoes tapping against the tile floor echoed louder than any words she could have said. Outside, the sun greeted her with warmth the store had not. A breeze lifted her blouse as she paused at the curb. She didn't look back. Inside, Dana leaned against the counter, triumphant. "You have to be firm with people who don't understand boundaries," she said to no one and everyone. She probably thought this was a thrift shop. The laughter this time was fuller, freer. The tension broke. Shoppers returned to their routines. But something in the air had shifted. Not quite guilt, not quite shame. Just a lingering sense that a line had been crossed. The young cashier watched the door. Her hands trembled slightly as she rang up a customer. She didn't know why exactly, only that something about that woman's silence had unsettled her more than a shouting match ever could have. Back outside, Lenora stood by a parking meter. She closed her eyes for a moment, not out of exhaustion, but out of purpose. She had seen what she came to see. She had felt firsthand the cold transaction of exclusion that so many masked behind policies and smiles. She didn't hate them. She pitied them. They had no idea what was coming. A block away, a luxury sedan was making a slow turn down the street. Inside sat a man in a navy suit, reviewing the day's contracts. One of them bore the name Lily and Ash, now legally held by a shell company registered to a trust, signed and sealed. The ink had dried that morning. Warren didn't move fast. He moved right, and always with intention. As he turned into the parking space outside the boutique, he noticed Lenora standing calmly at the curb. She didn't wave. She didn't speak. She simply nodded once. He nodded back. The time had come. The boutique's door had barely finished closing behind Lenora, When the store's tone shifted from cautious to smug, Dana's voice rang out brighter now, uninhibited. She walked in like she had a reason to be here. She scoffed, brushing lint off her sleeve. Did you see the shoes worn flat? And that blouse looked like something from a clearance bin. A customer near the jewelry case laughed. You handled it well. She didn't make a scene. Dana raised a brow, pleased with herself. They never do when you stay polite. That's the trick. Be calm, firm, and make them want to leave on their own. The young cashier's fingers twitched nervously on the register. She glanced again, at the door, then back down. A pair of earrings clinked softly against the counter, the sound small but sharp. The store carried on. Champagne was offered again to the real customers. Music, once paused, resumed. A soft piano track meant to sound elegant, now feeling like a laugh behind closed lips. In the fitting room, the two blonde women discussed handbags. One of them muttered, "She was probably casing the place." Her friend agreed. Dana circled back to the necklace Lenora had touched. She looked at it, then picked it up with 2 fingers, inspecting it as if it might now be tarnished. "Put this one in the back," she told the cashier. "It's been handled." Marcus, the security guard, lingered near the back, unsure of whether to stay or return to his post. Dana gave him a little wave. "We're all good now," she said. "Thanks for the help. Better safe than sorry, right?" He nodded slowly and walked off without a word. His posture was stiffer than before. Back outside, Lenora stood just beyond. View of the windows, still calm. Her face unreadable. The wind lifted a strand of hair and she tucked it behind her ear. She made no move toward the car. Not yet. People inside the boutique had returned to their comfort. The perceived threat had passed. Their laughter came easier. Their posture loosened. It was as though her presence had never mattered, except for the faint buzz of satisfaction they shared, having handled the situation. Dana leaned into the counter and tapped on her phone. She scrolled through her store's social media account, liking comments, uploading a quick photo of the new handbag line. But then, a strange shift. The young cashier slowly walked toward her, clutching a small cloth and the earrings Lenora had nearly bought. "Ms. Caldwell," she said gently, "I think we might have gone a little far." Dana didn't look up. "Excuse me?" The girl swallowed. "I mean, she didn't do anything. Maybe we didn't need to call Marcus." Dana's smile returned, but it was cold. "We didn't need to. But we should have. You think people like that walk in here for fun?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Sweetheart, in this business, you either protect your space or you lose it. Don't be naive." The girl blinked, then stepped back. Her eyes drifted to the necklace display, now bare. Outside, Warren had stepped from the car. He stood tall, his presence steady but unassuming. He adjusted the cuff of his shirt and looked toward the boutique. He waited. Lenora finally moved, walking to meet him at the curb. They spoke no words. None were needed. He gently touched her back and she nodded. Inside, Dana laughed again, this time imitating Lenora's voice in a mocking drawl. "I'm just browsing," she mimicked, dragging out the syllables with a twisted smile. A few customers chuckled. The disrespect was no longer veiled. It was performance. An act rehearsed by those who thought power meant ownership of space, and that ownership meant dominance. No one stopped her. No one corrected her. No one thought they'd need to. And so, when the bell above the door chimed again, announcing the arrival of a man in a navy suit with calm eyes and steady breath. No, one flinched, not at first. He carried a simple leather folder. His shoes shined, his steps measured. He didn't look angry. He looked resolved. Dana looked up from her phone, uninterested. "Sir, if you're looking for a job application, we take those on Wednesdays." He kept walking. She straightened. "Excuse me, can I help you?" He stopped at the center of the room. "I believe you can," he said, voice low, even. He opened the folder and removed a stack of documents, placing them carefully on the glass counter. The top page bore a single title in bold. Notice of transfer. Property and operations. Dana stared at it. Her eyes scanned the header, then the signature, then the company name, Then the closing line. Effective immediately. Her lips parted, but no sound came. He looked up, not cruelly, not smug, just directly. You'll finish the day, he said softly. Then it's ours. Behind him, Lenora entered the boutique for the second time. She did not smile. She didn't need to. She simply stood still. This time, no. One laughed. Dana's hands hovered above the documents like they might burn her. Her polished nails tapped nervously on the counter as she scanned the fine print for some loophole, some mistake. But the signatures were real. The seal was legal, and the name on the deed, printed in sharp black letters, was one she didn't recognize, but would never forget. Warren Jameson, trustee. The store, the building it sat in, and the 3 surrounding units had all been transferred to a quiet real estate trust registered out of Atlanta. The same trust that had been quietly buying parcels along Crestwood's main street for nearly 8 months. And now, it owned Lily and Ash. Dana's face drained of color. The room, once full of laughter and judgment, fell quiet. One woman near the handbag slowly stepped away, pretending to look elsewhere. Another customer glanced toward the front, unsure whether to stay or leave. The young cashier took a single step back from the register and stood still, her eyes on Lenora. Dana finally looked up. I don't understand, she stammered. You can't just walk in here. Warren's voice was calm, precise. We gave notice to your holding company this morning. You may check your email. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers. The message was there, time-stamped, signed, verified. You'll be compensated for your remaining inventory, he added. And we're offering a 3-month severance if you agree to step down without public dispute. Dana's jaw clenched. Step down? It's no longer yours to run. She stared at him like he had just rewritten the world, and in a way he had. Behind Warren, Lenora walked further inside. Her steps were unhurried, her gaze direct. She passed by the same displays she had seen earlier, the same overpriced jewelry, the same cashmere folded on glass. But this time no one moved to stop her. No one dared. She paused in front of the earrings, the ones the cashier had removed after she touched them. Now they were back in place. She looked at them. Not with desire, not with bitterness, but with quiet, knowing eyes. Then slowly she turned and faced the room. People didn't know what to do. They looked away. They adjusted handbags, shuffled shoes, studied labels they had no interest in. It was easier than meeting her gaze. No one asked who she was. Somehow, they already knew. Dana spoke again, voice tighter now, grasping at dignity. You think this makes you better than me? Warren didn't answer. Lenora did not move. Dana's voice cracked. You had no right to humiliate me like this. Warren's eyes narrowed, just slightly. No one raised their voice, he said. No one humiliated. You. His words hung in the air like a mirror. Dana swallowed hard. Her bravado shrank. She glanced at the customers who had once laughed with her. Now they were silent, avoiding eye contact. Their alliance had dissolved. Even Marcus, the security guard, had stepped out of the hallway and stood motionless, his arms folded but unsure what to do with them. He looked at Lenora. She gave him the faintest nod. Not angry, not vengeful, just acknowledgement. The moment settled. No yelling, no threats, just quiet displacement. A shift in ownership, in power, in who belonged. Dana turned, picked up the documents and stormed into the back without another word. The door clicked behind her. Customers slowly filed out, some embarrassed, some wide-eyed. The air had changed. It was no longer Dana's store. It wasn't even a store anymore, it was something else entirely. Warren turned to Lenora. He reached out his hand, not for show, not for control, but simply to touch her hand. She took it. They stood still for a moment in the center of the boutique. The young cashier, trembling slightly, approached. I'm sorry, she whispered. I knew it wasn't right. I didn't say anything. Lenora nodded once. Her voice was soft. You know now. And that was all. No speech. No headlines. Just truth. As they turned to leave, Warren gently guided Lenora to the door. Their reflection passed through the boutique's glass, two figures once dismissed, now standing at the helm of change. The bell chimed again as the door opened, but no one inside looked away this time. They all watched. They all saw. Have you ever been judged for how you look or where you're from? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. The boutique's door stayed closed the next morning. A small printed sign had been taped to the glass, closed for transition. Reopening soon under new management. There was no fanfare, no press release, no apology tour, just silence, and a town that began to hum with quiet questions. Word moved quickly in Crestwood. People talked in the post office, over fences, inside the cafe on 4th Street that still served sweet tea in styrofoam cups. Nobody had the full story, but everyone heard the same phrase. She bought the whole store. No, her husband did. They own the whole block. By noon, rumors spilled into the city council office. By nightfall, a small local blog published a short post. Lily and Ash Boutique transferred to private trust. Former owner steps down. The article didn't mention race. It didn't need to. Crestwood was a town where meaning lived in tone more than words. The readers filled in the silence. Inside the boutique, the mood had shifted. Staff had been called in for a private meeting. Warren and Lenora didn't attend. It was handled by a new operations liaison, a quiet black woman from Atlanta named June, who wore her hair natural and her clipboard tucked under her arm like a shield. She didn't raise her voice either. But she was clear. We are reviewing all personnel. Your contracts will be honored, but your conduct is under evaluation. No one asked about Dana. No one needed to. Her office had been cleared out the night before. Dana had returned briefly, in the dark hours of the evening. She came in alone, avoided eye contact, packed her framed photos and gold pen holder into a box, and left. She didn't slam the door. She just left it ajar. She was offered severance with a confidentiality agreement attached. She signed it, not because she had been silenced, but because no one cared what she had to say anymore. Crestwood no longer tilted in her direction. Elsewhere in town, the ripples grew larger. A teacher from the local high school shared the story anonymously on social media. Her post read, "A woman walked into a store and was humiliated. She didn't yell. Her husband bought the building. That's what power looks like when it knows itself." The post went viral within a day, not nationwide, not trending, but enough to make Crestwood's name buzz in places it had never reached before. The city's Business Equity Council, recently formed but often dismissed as symbolic, held an emergency session. One member, a young black architect who'd been ignored at prior meetings, raised a simple point. We keep saying we want inclusion, but look how we act when inclusion actually walks through the door. This time, no one cut him off. Soon after, the council announced new guidelines for all downtown businesses applying for permits, mandatory diversity and sensitivity training, reviewed hiring practices, and open complaints channels. Not sweeping, change, but something. A start, and at the center of it, quietly, stood the couple who never said a word in public. Lenora didn't talk to reporters. She didn't write a statement. When a local paper emailed asking for an interview, she declined. With one sentence, "The story is already written in the way people act." The weeks that followed, letters arrived. One came from the boutique's former cashier, handwritten, shaky cursive. "I didn't stand up. I should have. You were right to stand still. I learned more from your silence than I did in 4 years of business school." Another letter came from a customer who had been there that day. I laughed. I didn't know why. I think I just didn't want to be the only one not laughing. "I'm sorry, I'll never do that again." Lenora kept the letters in a box in her hallway drawer. She never answered them. She didn't need to. The store stayed, closed for a week. When it reopened, it did so with a new name, Kindred, a nod to shared legacy, quiet strength, and the threads that connect people through something deeper than brand or trend. The shelves looked different now. Gone were the European labels with impossible price tags. In their place, garments by young black designers from Atlanta, handmade jewelry from local artists, and books from Southern black writers that Dana never would have stocked. The space felt warmer, not louder, just honest. The same walls, the same floors, but different air. On opening day, Lenora stopped by, not for ceremony, just to see. She wore the same kind of clothes, soft, quiet, unfussy. No makeup, no flash. Inside, the new manager greeted her with ease, not pretense. "Welcome back," Lenora smiled faintly and walked the floor. No one followed her. No one stared. She picked up the same necklace she once touched. It was still there, but this time it was hers if she wanted it. She set it back down. Outside, a mother walked past with her young daughter. The girl paused, looking through the window. "She owns that?" the girl asked. "No," the mother replied, watching Lenora with a half smile. "She changed it, and sometimes that's even more powerful." Months passed. Seasons shifted. The storefront once known as Lily and Ash settled into its new identity as Kindred. No ribbon cuttings, no bold signage. Just a wooden placard above the door, carved with care, and a warmth inside that invited people to stay longer than they intended. Crestwood adjusted slowly, like an old house remembering its shape. On Saturday mornings, the same sidewalk that had once carried whispers now carried greetings. Locals stopped in after church, after breakfast, or just to browse. Teenagers drifted through the racks, curious. Grandmothers gave quiet approval. Kindred became more than a boutique. It became a small piece of healing stitched into fabric. The staff looked different now, not because of quotas or policies, but because hiring had become intentional. June, the operations manager, brought in designers from nearby communities, young apprentices and quiet creators who had never been given space before. Every item in the store now told a story, not just of fashion, but of belonging. One shelf held candles poured by women who once lived in Crestwood before the rents rose. Another section featured dresses sewn by a mother-daughter duo from Savannah. Customers didn't just leave with bags. They left with connection. Lenora visited sometimes. Never during peak hours. She didn't make appointments. She didn't announce her presence. She'd walk slowly through the store, pausing by the earrings, the same ones that had once marked her unwelcome. She never bought them. She didn't need to. What had once been a wound was now a window. She spoke little inside the store, but her influence was felt in everything. The music softer now. The seating placed with care. The absence of mirrors at every turn, because not every space had to reflect back judgment. It was her quiet fingerprints, not her name, that shaped the store's soul. Meanwhile, Warren continued his work just as quietly. In the months that followed, he acquired 2 more buildings on the block. But he didn't flip them for profit. He offered long-term leases to black-owned businesses, capped rent increases, and added a clause to every contract. Community partnerships required. Each tenant had to sponsor a local school, a mentorship program, or a food pantry. Not because it made headlines, but because it made roots. The city noticed. At first, only in passing. A small article. A council member's offhand comment. Then came the larger moments. A regional magazine featured Kindred in a spread titled, "Reclaiming Retail: What Happens When Ownership Looks Like the Community." Lenora declined to be photographed. "I'm not the story," she said. "The store is." But in truth, she was the story, the kind people didn't forget. Not because she made a speech or took a stand in front of cameras, but because she never raised her voice. And still, the room changed. Those who had laughed that day inside Lily and Ash carried that moment quietly. They didn't return to Kindred, not all of them, but their silence in town carried a weight too. They were no longer proud of how they'd reacted. That shame echoed, just loud enough to keep them honest. The young cashier, now promoted to assistant manager, kept the handwritten apology she'd sent Lenora taped to the back of the office door. She read it whenever she trained new hires. This store had to earn its peace, she'd say. You guard it with how you treat people. That's the only policy that matters. Dana, the former owner, had left Crestwood altogether, moved north, according to town talk. Started fresh, according to her posts, but even in her new circles, her reputation followed. Not because of gossip, but because the internet never forgets. That viral post still lived online. Her silence afterward became part of her brand, a lesson in absence. And Lenora? She returned to her garden, her books, her slow mornings. She didn't change her clothes, didn't trade her simplicity for symbols. When a neighbor asked her why she never told the boutique who she was that day, she answered softly, I didn't need them to know who I was. I needed to know who they were. In her living room, the box of letters grew. More came, some from strangers, some from old neighbors who saw the story unfold from afar. One letter came from a girl in high school. I was scared to speak up, I still am. But when I saw what you did, how you just stood there, it showed me I don't have to shout to be powerful. The world around Lenora began to shift, not fast, not loudly, but deeply, store by store, street by street, person by person, because justice, when quiet, lasts longer. A year later, on a warm spring morning, Lenora walked alone down Main Street. The air smelled like blooming dogwood and fresh soil. Shops had opened their doors to let the breeze drift in. Kids laughed in the distance, and a busker played something soft on a saxophone near the corner. She didn't walk fast. She never did. When she passed Kindred, the bell above the door chimed, faintly as a group of teenagers stepped out, chatting, holding small paper bags. One of them, a girl with tight curls and wide eyes, paused when she saw Lenora. She didn't know her name, but she felt something, a kind of recognition, like she was standing in the presence of someone who had changed something without needing anyone to clap. Lenora offered a gentle nod. The girl smiled back and ran to catch up with her friends. Inside the boutique, the walls looked the same, but the feeling was different. Soft jazz played. A mother helped her daughter try on her first dress for church. A father paid for earrings his wife had been eyeing for weeks. No one followed anyone. No one whispered. Respect lived here now, not because rules were enforced, but because dignity had been made permanent. Lenora didn't go inside that day. She didn't need to. Her work was never about the building. It was about the mirror the moment had held up to the town, and what the town chose to do with the reflection. She kept walking, her steps steady. A woman who had once been asked to leave, now belonged everywhere she stood, because some victories are loud, but the ones that last are quiet. They settle into the bones of a place. They change how people look at strangers. They rewrite what's allowed, and when justice walks softly, the ground still remembers where it passed. If stories like this move, you share this one, not for views, but for reflection. One story at a time, we change what dignity looks like.